a powerful spaceborne lifeform resembling a large snowflake would belie the true nature of the crystalline entity. But what do we know about this scary spaceborne lifeform? Well, today we'll find out. Hello and welcome to another episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon, a Star Trek web series that dives into the history of any given topic using beta canon sources and my own imagination to fill in the gaps. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the crystalline entity as first seen in Season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation to better understand its place in Star Trek history. Please note, yes, it's that time of year again, Halloween. And to mark the occasion, I thought I'd make a video on one of the scariest spaceborne lifeforms to ever come out of Star Trek. Also, though this video is mostly canon information, I found the beta canon snippets in various sources to be extremely fascinating, and I hope you do too. But as always, because this is just a beta canon video, all information relayed should pretty much be taken with a grain of stardust and only considered a little bit of Star Trek fun. And so, with all that out of the way, let's begin. Since their very first moments of space exploration, Starfleet Command had realized two things: that space was a wondrous place containing infinite marvels, and also that space was dangerous beyond compare. Giant space amoebas ready to eat you up, giant green space hands ready to crush you or your starship, and death clouds the size of half a solar system would all contribute to this wondrous but deadly outlook on space. By the 24th century, very little had changed when it came to the frontiers of Federation space. Sure, the borders of the Federation had expanded to greater distances, and the core systems of the Federation were always fairly quiet, but any starship venturing beyond the final frontier could be subjected to the same various types of unknown dangers. And perhaps one of the most scariest of all the 24th century spaceborne lifeform encounters would be that of the crystalline entity. Sitting at a height of 1,145 meters, as a lifeform, the crystalline entity was like nothing the Federation had encountered in its travels. Capable of warp velocities, the crystalline entity would travel around the galaxy functioning as a giant electromagnetic collector, converting organic matter into energy for its very survival. Once the entity ravaged a planet, the planet's natural resources were completely stripped bare, and no further life would be able to grow on it for many years to come. Everything from vegetation and bacterial lifeforms would be consumed by this entity. Vitreous matter was usually deposited in the entity's wake, as were elevated levels of hydrocarbons, lanthanides, and nitrates. Reports of the crystalline entity's existence first appear back in 2338, when the Federation colony at Omicron Theta vanished without a trace. The USS Tripoli, responding to the colony's distress call, would find no survivors, save for one deactivated android known as Data on the planet, and would report the planet itself appeared to be dying. After the attack on Omicron Theta, it would be 26 years before Starfleet would discover the cause of the colony's destruction. On stardate 41242.4, the USS Enterprise D, under the command of Captain Jean-Luc Picard, would visit the former colony, uncovering the previously undiscovered laboratory of Dr. Noonien Soong, the creator of the Enterprise's second officer, Lieutenant Commander Data. And through some investigation, as well as the discovery and reactivation of Commander Data's brother, Lore, the Enterprise D and her crew would come face to face with the crystalline entity. It would seem that Lore had made contact with the entity back in 2338 and had directed it to the Omicron Theta colony. Assuming Data's identity, Lore would then begin communicating with the crystalline entity once again, directing it towards the starship. Realizing something was wrong with Data, Wesley Crusher would enlist his mother's help to reactivate the true Data, and eventually Data would be successful in stopping Lore, and the crystalline entity would head off into the cosmos once again. But then in 2368, 4 years later, the newly established colony on Malona 4 would be attacked and destroyed by the Crystalline Entity. Enlisting the help of Dr. Kyla Marr, the Federation's leading expert on the entity, the Enterprise D would end up tracking down the space lifeform and begin rudimentary communications with it. However, Dr. Marr, having lost her son to the entity back on the attack on Omicron Theta, would end up destroying the entity by using a continuous graviton beam, much to the dismay of the Enterprise's crew. Though the danger level of an encounter with the Crystalline Entity was high, the fact that the Enterprise had begun to communicate with the entity meant that not only did the Crystalline Entity possess some type of sentience, but that it had been possible that perhaps and eventually the entity would understand the destruction it truly brought. However, with the entity now destroyed and Dr. Marr in custody, the Enterprise D would simply have to go on about its business, never to know the answer to its communications questions. Though Starfleet Command had assumed the Crystalline Entity to be a one-of-a-kind creature, the truth was anything but. In fact, many crystalline entities actually existed, though interestingly, their dietary requirements would vary from creature to creature. It seemed that most of the entities actually fed on various radiation types found only in nebulas. Thus, they were no real threat to Federation colonies or life forms. And in 2380, the USS Titan under the command of Captain William T. Riker would encounter several crystalline entities, establishing communications with them thanks to the techniques first pioneered by the Enterprise D. Through the use of intermittent graviton pulses, the Titan was able to train the crystalline entities to remain in that area of space, a cosmic spawning ground for various space-dwelling life forms, creating a sort of symbiotic relationship between them. This would effectively end the threat that the crystalline entity posed. After much study, the Federation's leading scientists have a theory as to where the crystalline entity began. Having a similar crystalline structure to that of the Tholian species, it is believed that the crystalline entity began somewhere in or near Tholian space. A far more ancient life form than the Tholians themselves, the crystalline entities would leave Tholian space in search of feeding grounds, not wanting to threaten the Tholian species, whom it considered to be its children of a sort. This would also explain the Tholians' seemingly religious reverence for the crystalline creatures. Although this theory is believed to be true, further study is needed to determine the answers once and for all. As for the Tholians themselves, they will neither confirm nor deny this theory, refusing to discuss the crystalline entities altogether. One of the scariest creatures known to exist in our galaxy, the crystalline entity would instead become a sort of misunderstood sentient life form merely looking to feed, with no desire to harm any other life forms at all, earning the crystalline entities their now welcomed place in galactic history. Thank you for watching today's episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon. What do you think of the crystalline entity and the historical narrative that I've created here? Do you want to see more videos like this one? Well, leave your comments in the section below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. Want to help the channel communicate with this wayward and misunderstood species? Then consider becoming a channel member subscriber or a channel patron, both a major help that allow this channel to purchase resources and 3D models to keep it going. The link to both memberships is in the description below. Thanks again for watching, live long and prosper, and happy Halloween!